Hey everybody, welcome to Austin, South by Southwest. We're here for our Facebook Live chat. We want to give everybody, wherever you are in the world, a little bit of a taste of what's going on at South by Southwest. So thank you for joining us, morning, noon, or night, wherever you happen to be. Many thanks to our team here in Austin who's hosted us over the past several days. We're here to talk to you about trends and innovation, some of the things that we're seeing, but most importantly, take your questions.
Please ask questions about any of the sessions that we've seen, the speakers, even the brand activations. Austin kind of transforms as a city, so there's stuff happening everywhere. So ask us questions, and if you do, actually one lucky participant will win a pair of Snapchat spectacles. So all the more reason to ask us questions.
And it's super easy. All you have to do is, in the comments, ask your question, and we'll be sure to answer it. Once you ask your question, you're entered to win, as long as you're a Cohn and Wolfe employee.
All right. So, we're seeing a lot of really interesting trends. I think in years past, we've seen a lot of trends around content, social engagement, VR, AR was really big last year, again this year. One of the things that we're noticing in particular are a number of sessions that are really focused on artificial intelligence. And if you think about that, it's pretty remarkable. A year ago, I was actually this year in a session, and people were commenting that a year ago, people weren't really talking about it at all. But we know that AI is really going to be the underpinning of a lot of the things that we're experiencing on the web. And everything that we do, every interaction that we're taking on the web is driving the learnings of machines, which are finding their ways into lots of different venues.
So we have a question. What's the most surprising thing you've learned so far?
Well, I'll jump in right away. I think one of the things that we have seen just on the theme of AI, a really interesting platform and technology that I saw called Replica, which is a chatbot that you train to speak and interact and emote in the exact same way that you do. Something a little bit scary. You give it access to all of your texts, all of your emails, all of your Facebook and Twitter posts, and then it represents as though it were you.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
I saw Joe Biden speak, which was unbelievable. It was a pretty intimate gathering. It was maybe 800, 900 people. And he talked about how he's really looking for innovators and brands to help him really combat cancer. He gave an example about how he is gathering all of this data, and Amazon came to him and said, well, you're going to need cloud space for that. So they worked together to create additional cloud space. And you wouldn't think that Amazon would be in the cancer game, but they are. And he's really kind of opened up the floor for any brand, any company, any innovator to come and help.
That's really interesting, Courtney, because I went to a cancer session too, but it was more about how do we look for solutions overall. And one of the biggest problems they were talking about is that there are so many disparate individual organizations that are collecting data, but to really see the patterns in order to actually solve and cure cancer eventually, we have to come together, and all these small institutions have to come together. The fact that Biden's bringing them together like this.
Yeah, they should have went to Biden's session.
Exactly. But it's fascinating. At the same day, those two things happened, and that yet there's a divide still.
Yeah, if I can jump in, I do think it's really impressive, the convergence of technologies when we think about from a healthcare standpoint. So to your point, you saw those like data, vendors or technology companies, and I went to a few sessions. There was this data visualization company is currently helping Amgen to revamp their entire drug development process, and also Walton are doing great stuff, to revolutionize senior care. So really, I think what you see here is technology companies are not only just drive awareness for brands, but also they're really trying to demonstrate outcomes for healthcare. So I think that's what we're seeing here from a healthcare standpoint.
It sounds like we've got some more questions.
Cool. Yep, we've got a question from Wes Robinson. How do you cut through the marketing hype at South by Southwest to the real technology that will impact consumer behavior?
I think it's interesting this year. What I've noticed is that in past years there was a lot more focus on kind of social networks. This seems to be the year of technology, more so than I've ever seen at South by. So whether it's AI, VR, AR, other technologies, there's a lot of interesting applications. I think for me, the most compelling panel sessions have been when they can show it, like, not in theory, but like really show it in practice for a brand.
Yeah.
The next question we have is from Jenna Rice from New York. Besides the Joe Biden session, what's been your favorite memory from South by so far?
I'll jump in. I'm a huge Mark Cuban fan, So I attended his panel yesterday and waited in line for almost an hour. Totally worth it because he shared some very intellectual thoughts about the future of technology, ways to implement technologies like AI into consumer initiatives, things like that. But to make it totally worth it, I stayed an extra 20 minutes after the session to meet him and get his autograph, which you can't see. It's on his badge, I promise you. So, yeah, meeting a very large technology influencer and hearing him speak, sharing his thoughts was phenomenal.
I saw the New York Times executive editor, and then I saw the Gawker editor, like the session right after that, and I can't think of two more different worlds than those two. But it was so fascinating watching the New York Times because basically their whole point of view is that people do not understand them, that people don't understand what a byline is, that when it says Aleppo, Syria, people do not understand that real people are in Syria risking their lives to get people this story. And he said, you know, I come from New Orleans, a very modest background from rural Louisiana, and people kind of have this view that people in the New York Times, you know, go to opera and speak French, and that's just, you know, absolutely not the case. So their point of view is they want to get, you know, the New York Times much more friendly and much warmer to rural communities. And
Awesome.
Gawker had another point of
We have
view.
more questions, huh?
Great, we got a lot more questions. One from Kim Ehrlichson in the New York office.
Oh.
What brands have done the most interesting activations there?
Most interesting activations. I would say what I'm really surprised about is brands taking people away from the convention center and all of the different places where you can see actual content scheduled by South by, and they're bringing people to their own parties, their own events, and they're scheduling their own speakers and panels at those events, which is pretty interesting because, you know, you can lure people with tacos or free beer, but luring them with actual content to learn about has been a big change this year.
Sony was probably the best
Yeah.
out
Yeah.
of anything.
Yeah.
Like, one, it was like huge, and two, it had about 1 million different installations in it. It had like AI robots, like cool art installations, and they had like more VR-y stuff. They had all the Sony PlayStation Experience stuff, which isn't even out yet, which is like using kind of like haptic suits and things like that. But it's pretty good, yeah.
Nat Geo
Yeah.
and NASA did some amazing
Yeah.
activations as well within the VR and AR space.
And I think that's a really good example of the technology marrying very well with the content, and it's not just technology for technology's sake.
That's right.
Awesome. We have another question from Taylor. She says, what a good-looking group. She said, what new trends or innovations have you seen that you think we can incorporate at Cohn and Wolfe? Hope Austin is treating you all well.
I think, sorry to jump in, like, I guess a different use case for AI is bot technology, and we're already seeing that being deployed, and there's no doubt that that's being adopted now, but it's just, I guess the biggest thing to keep in mind, I guess, around bots in general, there's a lot of talk around where we are at the moment, advancements in the technology itself, and then also some considerations, and some really important considerations, I think, to bear in mind is that the technology is lagging behind expectations at the moment, and to go in with an exploratory mindset as opposed to an expectation one. But most importantly, I guess that the question around how AI and bots are impacting search. So that's something I think we should be somehow cognizant of, is especially when Google, brands like Google, for instance, are investing very heavily in AI. There is a reason why. It's probably because they see a shift in consumer behaviors around search, and essentially instead of getting served a list of search results on a search engine page, you're probably going to be served only one response by a bot, and so it's that opportunity to get it right, and that's the opportunity for brands to get in front of users. So it's just those considerations to kind of keep in mind.
I saw the head of the Messenger product at Facebook talk about the fact that he thinks he's pretty sure within the next couple of years every single brand page, should have some sort of bot technology implemented. So we're definitely going to see that. And the challenge is, how do you design for conversational interaction and the value of the conversation itself. So.
And also just also reinforcing the business and consumer benefit of bot technology and AI in general. So with bots, obviously that affords businesses kind of communications at scale and more efficiencies, and also less room for human error, but also from the consumer side, you see those benefits in terms of, getting your queries tended to really quickly. Obviously that layer of personalization. The question, again, the debate was always, that layer of personalization, is that going to be in the interest of the consumer, or is that going to be in the interest of brands? And I guess those are still debates that are still kind of currently happening.
And yeah, how does that go to healthcare? Because that's, I think, is interesting too, right? Like that the patient, I think bots are now, you're gonna see that evolving, and what does that look like, and how do you answer the questions and make sure that it's also medically accurate?
Awesome. We've got a question from Courtney from the New York office. Anyone's first time at South by, what's been your experience? Was it what you expected it to be?
Show of hands.
First timers.
A lot of first timers. Yeah.
So yeah, I think the first time experience has been a little bit overwhelming at times. Trying to balance like going to all like the parties and the houses versus all the panels that you want to get into, and then realizing you're not going to get into all the panels that you wanted to get into. So what's the game plan after that? But I think it's been overall just a really rewarding experience in terms of the learnings and being able to take that knowledge back and apply it.
Awesome. Question from Teresa from New York. This South by has had more of a political bend to it than years past. What are you seeing and hearing on the ground about the convergence of politics, tech, and entertainment at the festival?
No one like, I've been to a couple of talks. There's loads of talks about fascism. Like I went to one about AI and fascism, and how AI has actually been around for like since the 20s, and it was used by the Nazis in their own way. Like for instance, the Nazis had like a system of where they would put photographs of different kind of nationalities through a kind of computer system, and then it would flag up if that person was Jewish or not. And that's how they were picking through, and the Japanese did a similar thing as well in the war.
Wow.
And it was talking about how they're bringing that system in within screening. So when you come into the US now, people are getting stopped just because of like the way that their nose is or the way that like their face is or anything like that. So there was like loads of stuff about fashion. Pretty much every talk that I went to made a kind of disparaging comment about Trump at some point.
Yeah. Lots of conversation too about how, for example, some of these technologies like artificial intelligence might be used for malicious purposes
Yeah.
and political
There are
context.
a lot of ethical debates this year about new technologies.
Right.
Great, awesome. We've got a question about AI. Considering AI, we've seen IBM Watson being the editor of a magazine. When is AI going to steal our jobs?
I mean, you know, I'll
You've seen some case studies.
Yeah. I mean, just to comment, I mean, I think one of the points that I heard in one of the major sessions about AI was the considerable disruption in jobs and wealth, and you know, that a lot of the disparity that you see in the distribution of wealth will become even more pronounced because you'll have more sort of tactical jobs being eliminated and replaced by machines. And I think if we can, you know, if what we're doing is basically training the systems to communicate, compile content autonomously, what does that mean for, it either places a higher value on the type of work we do as in the human curatorial capacity, or it poses a little bit more of a glum outlook.
Yeah,
I
so
guess.
it's like a few years. When you see AI being used to perform not only functional tasks, but creative tasks. So we've seen more examples of that, whether it's AI to produce commercials or even short films. So that's all pretty interesting, little scary.
Yeah, sorry, I also went to a talk that talked about, basically it was AI versus IA, and IA is intelligence augmentation, which was a completely new concept to me, and essentially it is basically kind of saying that whilst AI is replacing humans, IA offers it actually is a different take on the technology where it puts humans at the center of the technology. So instead of, say, a driver being replaced by a driverless car, it's basically you still have the driver, but the driver is better able to make decisions, you know,
that's cool.
flagging, you know, kind of, you know, accidents before they happen, etc. So,
That's cool.
so there is kind of some naysayers out there about AI and offering alternative solutions.
Great, we've got a question from Kate in the UK. What has been the most surprising thing you've really seen at South by? Anything that's really blown your mind, or it has been largely in with the trends you were anticipating?
I think I can answer that one, as my goal of South by was to really get a sense of what companies are doing to give back, and almost every activation or panel that I have been to, there's always been some element of social good and spreading the kindness and making sure that what your message is cuts through the clutter, and tips on how to do that. So of the more and more brands, as they start to embrace that element of giving back to just better the world and enhance their social good, I think that's been the most surprising thing, to see little bits and pieces of that infiltrated throughout the program.
I think as a veteran to South by, one thing that we've seen this year is that a lot of the brands are scaling back from big activations that we used to do. So it's interesting to see all the intimate things that they're doing at South by.
I think it was kind of surprising to me, like, although it's like a digital festival, a lot of the film and design tools that I went to, it was kind of getting rid of AI and getting rid of technology and almost kind of being anti it and bringing things back from, say, the 80s and 70s. I went to a whole 2-hour talk on typography, which is like interesting, but that's properly old school. Do you know what I mean? There was no talk about robotics or anything like that. It was all talking about the beauty of typography and how we need to keep those things still happening, even in this digital world.
Yeah, maybe just to build on that, there was quite a lot of conversation about how do you make the technology invisible, right? We spend so much time glued to our screens, and so how do we deepen the connectivity through other devices in our lives that mean that we're paying less attention to this and more attention to the people that we're interacting with?
Just really quick, so I went to I went to Mashable House, and the line that was around like the block was you got to go in and recreate Beyonce's pregnancy picture. And it was simple and hilarious and clever, and that's what ended up winning the day, as opposed to, they also had thermodynamic paint, which was interesting, but too esoteric.
Instagram-worthy content.
Yes, exactly.
So on that note, Jason from New York has asked, since South by Southwest is so popular, is it getting too big or crowded for its own good? Do you think it's still worth clients' dollars to host events there?
This is a debate every year. There may be different opinions in this group, but I've gone to South by now off and on for about 10 years. This year does feel different. I think in some ways good, in some ways maybe not. I think there is more of a technology focus, which is interesting. It does feel like it lost a little bit of its energy from past years. It has gotten really crowded. But I think to Madison's point, maybe some of that's being made up for these more interesting events that happen around the city. So I think if you're really plugged in, you can certainly find things to learn. We did see brand activation scale back this year.
Yeah, I would say it depends on the goal, obviously.
Yeah.
So Pfizer had its own session where it brought in an intern who was in, I'd say, his 70s. And it was a really compelling and interesting kind of story, and then they were able to publish it. So they were able to sow a shade of that company in a venue that they've never really been able to do before. So that was really interesting. And then obviously Biden went to the community to ask for ideas. But I do question the value of eShorts. I do question the value of some of these other brands and their big installations. I don't know what they're getting out of it.
It's not as busy as Cannes. The Cannes is way more busy, and there's less to do at Cannes as well. But the difference with Cannes is you're going there and you're talking in our industry, and you're getting inspiration from campaigns that have actually happened. As here, it's all talking about the future rather than looking back on already inspirational work. So it's a little bit different.
Yeah, it's up to you to really sort of think about how you're going to apply what you're learning here,
Yeah.
because not everything is about brands or campaigns. Right?
Right.
Great, we've got a question from Amy Battrell. Has there been any standout discussion around how we can create innovative and creative content now that social platforms are starting to look more and more alike? For example, the Snapchat story feature, live video, etc.
I think I heard an influencer make a really good point about that yesterday, just saying how all the content has to be differentiated across platforms because you don't want to be seeing the same thing on Instagram and then on Snapchat and then on Facebook. So it's interesting how you have to keep an aesthetic but still make it different.
Building on that, I heard maybe one of the same influencers talk about a very tactical tool she uses. I mean, she's one person. I think she has a blog and social channels. For her, she can't keep up with the 24/7 content requirement of being an active influencer. So she took all the dates out of her content, at least on her blog. And because our news cycle is so quick, she'll take something from 2 or 3 years ago and put it up again because it has gone away. People that are new to her site have never seen it. They haven't seen it on Pinterest or Instagram. So she'll reuse content that she's created in the past in a very tactical way to just maintain content availability on her sites.
Cool. There's been a few questions about fake news. One is, with the rise of fake news and its distribution in social channels, have there been any innovative new ways, as discussed, to how to stem this side?
So I did go to a session on fake news, and they had representatives from the New York Times, the Associated Press, Huffington Post, and Politico. And one of the things that they're doing is employing real-time fact checkers behind all of these sites. And the things that they're focusing on, it's interesting. are not necessarily the most outlandish statements. It's the ones that seem to be, the stories that seem to be potentially true, because those are the ones that are potentially the most dangerous.
Yeah.
And they're also doing a lot of product innovation on spotting language patterns that might indicate that things might not necessarily be true. So it's a lot of conversation, a lot of concern about that too, because I think, you know, the editorial role of news outlets is to try to suss out validity, and now we're living in a world with certain people in political positions that are disavowing news organizations. Right?
There's been a question, a little off the topic. Favorite food truck meals eating around Austin? What have you guys been loving?
Barbecue.
Yeah.
Grilled cheese. Yeah, the grilled cheese was real
The
good.
grilled cheese was so good. Avocado shrimp roll.
Yes.
Oh,
It's
very
like,
good.
it's like in a pita. Yes, that's what it is.
Yeah.
That's exactly what it is.
Okay, cool. One from Nick Anthony, and one of our last. Have you seen any activations or presences that you feel like we could have done better?
Oh.
Y'all look great, by the way.
Thanks.
Activations that we could have done.
Activations or what was it? Sorry?
Activations is or brand presence. You would have changed something and done it better.
Yes. So I think it's Carvana had
Oh,
their
yes.
where you shake the car.
Yes.
And it was a vending machine. The idea is that things get caught in a vending machine, so you have to shake the car loose. And I did it, and it was great. I mean, you get a first-person video of you trying to shake the car loose. But when you sent your email in to get the video, you couldn't post it on social without having to click through to the website for someone then to play the video. And so 3 clicks away on social is death, right? And so the fact that they couldn't give me, you know, a piece of content that I could immediately share on my networks was disappointing. So
I also thought I was winning the actual call.
Yeah, that was the other thing. That was very misleading.
Very disappointed when I got
Very
my phone.
that too.
Right.
I think like I don't know if everyone went to the Nat Geo house, but I did like it, and the talks that they had there were amazing. Like I've watched Corey Richards 3 times in 3 days talk. He's like my favourite photographer. But they had like barely any photography up there, and that's what they're about. They literally had like 5 photos, and then they had this really terrible AR experience where you got like a little tablet, and it's like, this is beautiful photography. Just leave it as it is. You don't have to put a digital rubbish CGI thing on top of it. But yeah, which is funny because Corey Richards was talking about how he uses digital to adventure and explore, but within his photography he keeps it pure and with film. So.
All right, 2 more maybe. What activations or topics do you wish there was more focus on here at South by this year?
Yeah.
The health track could really be improved, I'd say, because it was really kind of spotty, hit or miss. What I understand is that it's sort of it's evolving. It's only 6 years old, and this is the first year that it was in a convention center.
Yep.
But you know, literally, I went to one, and the speaker didn't show up, and they went on Skype, but it wasn't Skype like you would imagine it. Someone held the phone up to the microphone, and I'm like, why am I here? You can't make it. What am I doing here? So. Yeah.
Actually, on that too, there was a health expo last year and the year before. There wasn't one this year. They switched up to gaming, and so I think that it's great that they move health to the convention center, but I don't think they're putting enough resources and efforts behind it.
Less stuff on one topic, like every other talk is about AI. I know AI. But my beat wasn't AI, so it feels like they cut getting on a trend and then everything's about that trend.
Yeah.
There's so much more going on in like the whole world as well as like AI.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I attended a couple of different beauty sessions, and it seemed like there was definitely a common theme in every single one of them, which is great. But the theme was basically that everything is becoming more authentic. So people are less interested in stringy models and everything looking glossy and lovely, which again was great to see that theme kind of played out. But I think there were enough panels about it that by the time you got to the 3rd one, you were kind of going, okay, can we maybe shift to something a little bit different?
I think I was just going to say the prevalence of some of these things also sort of indicates broader macro topics as well. The idea to get back to sort of human-centric design. How do we bring human motivators back into the technology solutions, the content that we're creating. So.
All right, we've got 2 final round robins. The first one will be, what was the most overused buzzword you had at South by? Everyone can answer.
At the end of the day. Not a technology buzzword, but at the end of the day.
Innovation. There was an Onion article that said it was used 450,000 times as a joke.
Agree.
But yeah, absolutely
Agree.
innovation.
Cutting edge.
Yeah,
Cutting edge.
Yeah.
Storytelling.
The future of X.
All right, and then the last one we'll end on. What was the one topic you felt was the most important coming out of South by? Just everyone go around. AI, what was it?
I think for me, in this political climate, I think everyone, our industry, everyone is feeling more motivated to do something, dependent on what you're interested in and what you're passionate about. I think there's a lot of interest in being more active in our political landscape and our communities.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing, like social impact and what everyone is doing to contribute.
Yeah, there's an urgency. I mean, I go back to the New York Times editor who basically said there's going to be 40, 50 books written about the next 2 years, whether it's political, social, technological, you name it.
I think it's the idea that, everything is a platform. The idea that, between connected devices, the use of AI and chatbots, everything we implement or think about, in fact, has the capacity to be a platform. They were talking about Fabric as a platform, Fabric with embedded technology. So, and making that innovation open to other people to innovate on top of.
Yeah, and also I guess the truths are hidden behind cliches. And I know we all hear the whole kind of know your audience, but that was also reinforced. Like adopting technologies for the sake of it is obviously it will backfire. So understanding where certain technology should be living, what kind of tone and personality they should be adopting if they are AI activations, understanding what how it can be adding value as opposed to just kind of an interactive experience. I think that's kind of the biggest takeaway for me. And also another big one is kind of like we are at a very big pivotal moment for digital in terms of changing consumer patterns online. So it's understanding that and being part of this movement. I think we're just in this transitionary period where even with search and AI, we can use them together, and actually, we are using that slightly in the Linden office and seeing how they can be used very synergistically, but then slowly taking the training wheels off, and then hopefully kind of looking towards an AI future, but not that one that is completely taking over humans. So
one thought, and not to shamelessly plug Cohn and Wolfe, I think that there are some years where I go to South by and it's really easy to feel behind, just to feel like there's just no way you can kind of catch up with innovation. But I thought for me it was really affirming that a lot of what we're hearing are things that we've prioritized as an agency. It's like a lot of the technologies, we've been talking about how technology will be the core to how we create in the future and how we are creative. And so I thought it was actually really affirming, seeing a lot of other discussions around the same topic.
It's true.
Cool.
Yeah, a lot of the things that we've been talking about at Summit, South by out here, it's great.
All right, so I'll say goodbye. We're going to wrap
All
up.
right, thank you. All right.